Welcome to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, where we discuss all things political, bringing you the top stories, locally, nationally, and from around the world. I'm Ruben Abati, and This Day Live begins now. I'd like to welcome today's panelists, Professor Bola Akintenewa, Director General, Bolitech Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, and Chike Ogea, the former Commissioner of Information, Delta State of Nigeria. Gentlemen, welcome to This Day Live.
Thank you.
Now, let's start with the United Nations General Assembly, just concluded, the 74th UN General Assembly. World leaders gathered in New York City for the 7th session of the United Nations General Assembly this last week. The general debate started on the 24th of September and ended on the 30th, with dozens of world leaders scheduled to address the General Assembly. A few leaders and representatives have already addressed several issues. Imran Khan, in a powerful and passionate speech, pleaded that world leaders should end Islamophobia in an attempt to clear some of the misunderstanding surrounding Islam and its followers, while South Africa's Naledi Pandor, Foreign Minister of South Africa, said during her speech that the people responsible for a slew of xenophobic attacks in recent weeks will face the full might of the law. Meanwhile, Cuba's Foreign Minister blasted the Trump administration for its business and wrath as it denounced its decision to impose a travel ban to the United States on former Cuban President Raul Castro. However, on a lighter note, the Bahamas' Prime Minister expressed his gratitude to the international community for the support his country received after one of the strongest Atlantic hurricanes on record pummeled the island nation. This year's United Nations General Assembly comes as tensions flared in the Middle East. The United Kingdom Prime Minister pushes to secure a Brexit deal by the end of October, and as demands grow for governments to take greater action to combat climate change. Now, gentlemen, climate change was definitely a big issue at this year's United Nations General Assembly, and the Secretary General Antonio Guterres has set aside a special program for it. And then on the other side, on the activist side, we had Greta Thunberg, leading millions of children all over the world to urge political leaders to address the climate crisis. And we had the good fortune of our own president, President Muhammadu Buhari, addressing the climate change crisis, with him promising that Nigeria will address the challenge of deforestation and plant more trees, and by the year 2030, we will have scaled up climate change action, reduction of carbon emissions by at least about 45%. The Minister of Environment also addressed that. Another issue that Nigeria addressed at that summit is the issue of illicit financial flows, with the president calling on the international community to address this organized criminality, which is against the interests of African states. President Buhari, in his speech, also called for partnership with African states. And then on the sidelines, he had a number of meetings and programs, including the meeting by Nigerian governors, expressing commitment to achieving the 17 social development goals. And then we have also, even further down the line, at a high-level side event, the chairman of the EFCC addressing the issue of the process and industrial development, declaring it a scam. And President Buhari, of course, also echoed that at plenary to say that P&ID poses a threat to the economic survival of Nigeria. And then further down the line again, you had, Aliko Dangote, being honored with a hall at the Africa Center in East Manhattan. He having donated about $20 million to support that cultural center of the arts. So these were some of the highlights for Nigeria. But what do you think in terms of Nigeria's input and in terms of Nigeria's participation? Chike, I start with you.
Well, for me, you address a plethora of issues. Like you rightly said, the ones that I think are important to us. I think the one of climate change is very important because that also focuses on hunger. We know that with the kind of climate change we're seeing, where we're losing our oceans, deforestation, like you rightly said, you see, the way we feed, the way we consume, the way we grow our food, all these things have been impacted now. And definitely, government has to put a higher priority on that. As the government said, what exactly are going to be those initiatives they are going to use to address that, I don't know. But of course, the effect of climate change on hunger is greatly felt in Nigeria. And in fact, a lot of our security issues, if you ask me, with a lot of nomads coming down from the north, even from those outside the country. And what they are looking for is survival, basically, because they don't have enough water, they don't have fresh grass to feed their cattle, and even themselves. So these things are real, and there are things that, like I said, we have to strategically address. The Ministry of Environment has to be, proactive in this with sustainable methods for doing this. Of course, like you said, these are one of the new sustainable goals. We keep changing the names. They were first Millennium Development Goals. Then we keep shifting the goalposts. I think they are called the sustainable goals now. And
17 goals.
17 goals. So these are the things I think we have to do. For me, I think that's the major crux for us in Africa. The hunger and particularly in Nigeria.
And poverty. Zero poverty, which is SDG number 1.
That's right, definitely.
Prof, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you've said it all. You've drawn attention to the positive aspects of our president's participation there, and in fact, the theme of the UNGA itself. Let's begin with the issue of climate change. If policymakers in Africa in general, Nigeria in particular, were to understand various scientific reports on climate change as a challenge, I think our president would have done better. It's not a question of going to the UN and be saying we'll be doing X, Y, Z by 2030, etc. The problem is more critical. Issue 1, the whole of Europe had the problem, the challenge of what they call heat wave. They are talking about the heat now moving from the Sahara Desert, which is geopolitically located on African territory, moving to Europe. France had about this 45.3 degrees Celsius heat, which affected particularly Poland, Germany, and France. To the extent that, the hot nature of the climate, they call it hot sun in Spain.
Global warming.
It's more than global warming this time particularly, but the general cause is global warming. It was, they recorded the highest, temperature report in such a way that people will now have to put water in the fridge and then take to bed. I draw attention to that fact that that problem itself is a resultant of a problem arising from African soil. So, since the direction of the heat, we cannot say when it will now come southward. Chike drew attention to the fact that the cattle, the herdsmen, now have to leave the north to come southwards, simply because of this global warming. I think we need to take it more seriously. Second point, Professor Ositaize and Professor Amechi Uchegbu noted in 2009 at a two-day conference on global warming and implications for human security in Nigeria.
We want to add to that Professor Ben Akpati.
Yes, that was even earlier.
Formerly of the Nigerian Meteorological Agency.
Precisely. Now they have drawn attention to the fact that this global warming, this climate change, has more implications for African countries, more than the countries that are polluting, that are, more engaged in these greenhouse gas emissions. They are saying that while many countries that have refused to quickly implement the Paris Agreement on these carbon dioxide emissions to reduce that one, they say that European countries know that climate change will boost agricultural products. Meanwhile, but for us in Africa, the contrary is the case.
Well,
and
Prof,
now
I get your point that Africa needs to show also commitment.
Yes.
And there were indeed protests, to indicate seriousness about climate change.
But Ruben,
on the part of civil society in Abuja, in Johannesburg,
Ruben,
in Pretoria.
we need to underscore the point that climate change itself has the factor of politicization, which is the issue.
Yeah,
Which
which is what we have seen with the example of the United States,
Precisely.
of Brazil, of Argentina,
Yes.
and Saudi Arabia,
Precisely.
and China,
Yes.
countries that have not shown enough commitment.
Yes.
And what we have at the global stage and at the United Nations General Assembly is the example of a 16-year-old girl, Greta Thunberg,
Yes.
leading the charge, and Prince Harry going to Botswana
Yes.
to talk about the importance of climate change. Clearly. Do you have anything to add?
No,
Chike?
I just, like I said, I like to always look at it from the impact on us back home. And I know that it is impacting on our security, which is the greatest challenge we are dealing with today. And that is why, if I look at it from that prism, that is why it is a problem that should be handled yesterday and tackled. Like you said, we are fond of this, giving ourselves all this time limits. A government that has a 4-year span will be telling us what will happen in 2030, and all that. Yeah, it's good to have long-term plans and all that. But there are some issues that need the immediate. I would love to see, something that shows us a blueprint for what we are going to do.
Well, I guess we will need the whole day to discuss.
Tom Beck drew attention
crisis.
to the fact that, look, this thing has been there for more than 3 decades. They are not doing anything.
Yeah.
And now
And our strongest message is that the political leaders should follow the scientists.
That's right.
Prof referred to the scientists earlier on.
Yes.
The political leaders should listen to the scientists. And it's the same message that Prince Harry conveyed in Botswana. But I hope you will join some of us in pushing that Greta Thunberg should be given the Nobel Peace Prize for this year. Young lady, so much wisdom,
No,
much leadership.
we've seen a lot of young ladies. What's the name of that little girl that was shot in the head in Pakistan or somewhere? Malala or
Malala. Malala,
so it's not about age. These are people that God has just blessed
Yeah,
with so much.
Tom Beck has demonstrated,
Yes.
a focused attention,
That's what I'm saying. Even at
commitment,
such a young age,
and even asking African leaders, world leaders, to say, dare say this?
it is something.
You are not showing any commitment.
Yeah, but some people say she was rude and that she was maybe mentally unbalanced.
No. in this case, she pointed out that if they refuse to show commitment, that the youth, their generation, will never forgive them.
Anyway, we'll take a short break now here on This Day Live, the Sunday talk show. When we return, we'll be discussing more stories. Don't go away. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me in the studio, I have Professor Bola Akinteroa and Chike Ogea, former Commissioner of Information, Delta State. Well, Prof and Chike, let's look at another subject. We've been talking about the United Nations General Assembly. Now let's talk about Nigeria.
Yeah.
where the police in Kaduna State rescued more than 300 persons as young as 10 years old from an Islamic school where they had been chained and maltreated for at least 3 months. Officers raided the building in the Regasa area of the city where the majority of the inmates were chained on both legs and others chained to electricity generating sets and vehicle alloy rims. Kaduna State Police spokesman Yakubu Sabo said the facility, which has been operating for a decade, enrolls students brought by their families to learn the Quran and be rehabilitated from drug abuse and other illnesses. He said 7 of the managers, including the owner of the property, have been arrested. Parents of some of the children had, however, disputed police claims that the inmates were being abused and held against their wish. According to a statement, President Muhammadu Buhari condemned all forms of rights abuses, whether of adults or children. He commended the efforts of the police and said all children must be safeguarded and protected from all evil influences in the society. Well, let's take a look at the footage from that.
This place is neither a rehab or an Islamic school because you can see it with yourself. Small children, some of them are brought from our neighboring countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, Ghana, and the rest. And the children gathered here are from all over the country, across all over the country. They were here, some of them were even chained. They were used, dehumanized. You can see it yourself.
Well, Chike, let me start with you. This raises very clear issues of abuse of fundamental human rights. I mean, no human being, whether they are persons undergoing rehabilitation or whatever, should be denied their rights under Chapter 4. And we see here cases of, abuse of human dignity, right to human life. We see cases of torture. We see a violation of the right to freedom of movement and all of that. But what I find that is curious in this particular matter is that some of the parents are saying their children should be released and that they have no objections to how they have been treated. And at the Islamic center where they have been kept, is with their own permission.
Yeah.
And that, but the police say, based on their own investigations, this is clearly a case of human abuse. What do you think?
Well, you see, it's a pity that such horrendous, like you said, torture against a human being. I mean, this is beyond grievous bodily harm, if you ask me, which is a major crime, both in English law and, in Nigeria, where we have it in the criminal code as assault, battery, and all what you can think about, aggravated assault, like you said, false imprisonment. There are so many crimes committed there, but that is not the issue. You see, what I want to tell you is this. I remember in 1983, when I had finished my first degree, I studied psychology for my first degree, and my dissertation was about people with mental illness, and I had to do a field study. I remember, and I went back home to Asaba over the holiday, and my late uncle took me to all these celestial and churches, different churches there. And I saw all of this then. I remember I asked, they said, no, they have one psychological issue or one mental illness, and they have to beat them, they have to chain them, they have, and I did the whole thing, of course, I did the report. So to me, it is not a strange thing, one, and let us not think it only happens in Kaduna and in, with Muslims or anything. No, I can assure you, this is happening everywhere, under different guises. Like you rightly said, some of these people, they said, okay, go and learn the Quran. That is the one at issue now. That is why these children are here. But there are other ones, they are saying, this is a deranged person. This person is mentally unfit to be in society. And because of that, you go and torture them. You put all that kind of inhuman acts on them. And I'm beginning to wonder why all that is happening. Because rightfully speaking, these are not things that should be happening in the 21st century at all. I'm happy with the very, very robust response by the president saying, definitely, he's not going to condone that kind of nonsense. And I think, aside from just disbanding that school, I think real investigation should go into it and let us know the motive behind the people that set it up. In Nigerians, In Nigeria, we are generally the worst enemies to ourselves. Our penal system is always so inhuman. If you go to the prisons, there's something I even saw over the week as well. This is a prison that is even, prisons, it's a federal institution, but there was this visuals I saw of the prisons in Ogwashuku, which is very near me there in Asaba. And you needed to see the inmates there. There were moving skeletons. And I hear they are just so mean and horrible to these people. And I wonder why we get so much joy in this country from inflicting this kind of physical, psychological, and mental damage on other human beings. I think it is horrendous, and I think it's something that definitely has to stop.
Prof, what do you think?
It has no place in a civilized society.
I want to look at it at two different levels. The first level is the one you raised, which is how to reconcile, fundamental rights, preventing violation of, human rights, and the position of their parents. The second level is hypothetical. I do not look at it the way my brother Shike has presented it. Now let's start with the hypothesis. British Prime Minister at the level of the United Nations General Assembly, that would be around early 2000s, around 2003-04. He said that there was a village in the FCT, Federal Capital Territory, in fact very close to Abuja, a school where terrorists were being trained. He said this publicly on the floor of the United Nations General Assembly.
This definitely is not Boris Johnson. This must be who there? Tony Blair or Cameron?
Tony Blair, I would say it's Tony Blair. Now, I remember I reacted and wrote in my column to say, why wouldn't the government of Nigeria respond to this type of statement made internationally open? Again, I was condemning the British to say, look, we are partners. Why report us internationally? Why wouldn't you partner with us and raise this issue? Why am I referring to it? It's just to suggest that, for me, the discovery is not a big deal. There have always been reports like this.
So in that regard, you agree with Chike?
No, yes,
who says that this is not an isolated case?
No, I know. That's where I will respond to his question at the second level. That, look, at the end of the day, my hypothesis is that, look, this school is a training ground for terrorists. All right? By shutting them down is to harden them, for them to know that, look, when they are going out, when they are going to kill all others, it wouldn't have meant anything. When you see a policeman that has been under very hot sun throughout the whole day, controlling traffic or controlling everything, why would you expect him to have sympathy, to show kindness to you? So I think that the hardening, the enslavement has the purpose of preparing them to be hardened when it comes to their...
so, Prof, in other words, I get your point. That now, the police, in investigating this matter, should leave no
stone unturned.
No stone unturned.
That's right.
Because we may be dealing with a situation whereby that camp is not just for the teaching of the Quran. It may be a breeding ground for terrorists. That's what you are saying.
The two go pari passu. Look, from Quranic perspective, we have been told that if you kill on behalf of God, you go to God directly.
Surrounded by virgins.
So in this case, that brings me to the second level of analysis. Their parents, who are also Muslims, who believe in that, believe that by releasing their children to go for that type of training because of God is perfectly in order. That's why they will be asking that, please release my children. They were there on the basis of our consent.
Well, Prof, an ancillary hypothesis will be that having been busted, the organizers of that center may rent a crowd of parents.
Yes.
Because these parents, their identities have not been established, right? Their connection with the chained persons who have been freed has not been established. And that's why I go back to your joint, submission that the police, should be very thorough in their investigation. And where there is any linkage with terrorism or there is any linkage with abuse of fundamental human rights, then the police should do their job.
A footnote to that is that we should not just be talking about
we
the
also
victims.
have a bibliography on this matter.
We should not just be talking about the victims.
Mm-hmm.
The school, the proprietor, the teachers, information, torchlight must be directed to them. Let's hear about that.
Yes,
more.
I'm sure.
Rather than the victims.
It's going to be a full-scale investigation. Because for me, Ruben, I don't believe that any parent, no matter how hardened he is, will acquiesce to a situation where your child will be in that kind of horror chamber. Even if those children, like you rightly are thinking, are being prepared for terrorism, I'm sure there are better ways of preparing for terrorism, even the suicide, the suicidal acts they engage in. But this particular one, I think, is totally horrendous.
No, you see, heartlessness, let me tell you.
I think it's
Some people cannot even take ordinary blade or needle to hurt the other.
Yes.
But when people take drug, all right, their eyes are there. They don't care.
Life wouldn't mean anything. Are we saying they are also taking drugs there?
Well, these are the things saying that's also a possibility.
Well, okay. Let it be fully investigated.
Chike and Prof, let's take another short break.
Let it be.
Here on ThisDayLive, the Sunday Talk Show. When we return, we'll take more stories. Don't go away. Come back to ThisDayLive, the Sunday Talk Show here on the Arise News Channel. Here with me in our Lagos studio, I have Professor Bola Akinteru, Director General of the Polytech Center for International and Strategic Studies, and Chike Ogia, former Commissioner of Information Delta State. Now, before we went on break, we were talking about the over 300 persons who were rescued from a hostage camp purportedly designated for Quranic teachings. But let's take another story, also with a religious hue. Two former spiritual mentors of Biodun Fatoyinbo, pastor of the Commonwealth of Zion Assembly, popularly known as KUSA, Busola Olotu and Pastor Emmanuel Osset, have broken their silence nearly 3 months after rape allegations against the controversial cleric, Pastor Fatoyinbo, went viral. Mr. Fatoyinbo has been embroiled in a messy scandal since June, when Busola Dakolo, a celebrity photographer, accused him of raping her as a minor about 20 years ago. In a recent interview with media personality Adesua Onyenekwe, aired on Arise TV, Mrs. Olotu, a pastor, says she found out about the alleged rape incident for the first time in 2011, and from her interaction with Busola Dakolo and the fact that 3 other women had made similar allegations against him, she knew that the allegations were true. Also in the interview, Pastor Osset confirmed that after Mr. Fatoyinbo started his church, Fatoyinbo reached out to him to pray for him, and he became the controversial cleric's spiritual father. He, however, said he had to end their relationship after allegations of adultery were leveled against Pastor Fatoyinbo in 2013 by someone named Ese Waters. And in what appears to be a reaction to the interview, the pastor took to his Instagram page to advise people not to be bothered about those who are jealous and envious of him. In his simultaneous post, he wrote, and I quote, "I think some of us were born to give more love than we'll ever see in return." End of quote. He, however, did not elaborate.
The case study that is making us want to speak to ministers across Nigeria, for anybody who's open to us, is one of someone who shares your name. Her name is Busola Dakolo,
Okay.
who has recently come out to say her pastor at some point in time had raped her in the past. Now, there's been a lot of controversy, and we decided to come to Ilorin, to the home where this particular pastor originated. And I'm aware that you must know him. It's impossible. Ilorin is a small place. Do you know this pastor? Are you aware of this case? And what are your thoughts with regards to this case?
I know Pastor Biodun. Actually, Pastor Biodun at some point was quite close to me.
When you say close, what does that mean?
Well, close in the sense of I was like somebody he looked up to in terms of, he just started, moving towards me. How do I put this? He came at some point to introduce himself to me, and
Had he started ministry at that time?
I don't know if he had started ministry the way the way it was. But at a point he left Ilorin. He didn't really tell me when he left Ilorin. I didn't know when he left Ilorin, but at some point I just realized that the relationship had broken.
Have you reached out to Pastor Biodun FATOYINBO yourself? Because you know him, you say. Have you reached out to Busola yourself? Because you know them.
Yeah. You see, concerning Busola, what happened was in 2011, a young lady joined this ministry. Her name is Fumi Ayeni. So one day in 2011, Fumi walks into my office here, and she's actually very agitated. She said she's, everything about her was, ruffled. So she sat down, and then she said, "Mommy, it's not about me. It's about my sister."
Older or younger?
She said, "My younger sister." So I said, "What is it about your younger sister?" She said, "My younger sister has been facing..."
Well, Prof, I'll start with you. You are the Secretary General of the Board of Trustees of the Christian Celestial Church of Christ worldwide. Now, one of the issues raised by Adesu Onyenokwe in our concluding statements in that interview is that, look, the church has a responsibility, and that the church cannot afford to have rogue pastors just in case they exist. And she was saying that more or less, the church should have like a code of conduct, guideline for pastors, for leaders of the church, so that they do not mislead the congregation, so that they do not abuse, the fiduciary responsibilities in their position as trustees of the religious estate. What do you think? Is it possible? Is it feasible that we will have a day when church leaders will be in a position to prevent this kind of thing?
There are two issues in one, as you have raised that. There will certainly be a day when there will be consensus of opinion and position on that. As of today, many churches do have these regulations, code of conduct. I'm aware that the Celestial Church of Christ in particular, we have a code for everyone. Where problems like these arise, they are located at the level of individuals who do have parishes established by themselves and who are in charge of parishes they established by themselves. So more often than not, they create regulations for themselves. They do not always go along directives as given. But as Onyenokwe had rightly pointed out, it's quite feasible. Compliance. I am aware that the new, Constitution of the Celestial Church of Christ that is under preparation is already looking at these problems, especially where people who claim to be messengers of God pastors of God, servants of the word of God, will be doing the contrary. They will say one thing, but acting contrary to what they are even saying. This, I think, is a problem that can be permanently addressed. But that does not mean that even with that, we wouldn't have people who will still disregard, whatever the regulation says. The beauty of it all is that the pastor, the registered pastor, the recognized pastor on the basis of law in our church, Emmanuel Mobi Oshofa, stands by the rule that anybody who does not comply with the spiritual obligations in the Bible should be considered a non-true Celestian. So when we are talking about a FATOYINBO in this particular case, when I can say one evidence or one rape too many, when you are having too many people coming out in the open to say, you did this, what evidence do you want again? And you are now, FATOYINBO is on record to have said that you should be lucky that it is a man of God that had done this to you.
That's hearsay, isn't it?
Now, how?
That's hearsay?
It's not hearsay.
Or was he the one that said it?
He said so. That's what
That was reported speech.
That was what Dakolo
That's an allegation. That's the allegation. Part of the allegation.
Yes. He said that, look, cool down, cool down. I'm a man of God. You should be happy that it's a man of God that has
That is sharing the anointment.
so
But Chike, you are a lawyer.
Yes.
How serious is this problem? Because
serious.
part of the argument that I push
serious.
is that the Evidence Act, whether you are looking at Section 50, Section 200, or any other section, or the burden of proof, does not favor the person
pastor
seeking justice.
But you see,
what can we do?
The truth is this. I don't like preempting cases. I just look at things from the general spectrum of what I see, just like he said earlier on. And the truth is that there has been serial accusations of this particular pastor. This pastor, I remember how I ever heard about him. Then I was a commissioner in Asaba, I remember, and someone was just asking me, do you know him? And I said, no, I don't know him. And
but you know him by reputation.
No, I didn't. I'd never even heard about him then. I had not even heard about
Which
him.
of the reputations?
And then the person goes ahead to tell me a story and says to me, I have a friend of mine who went to England or something, or she heard about it. I can't even remember now. It's long ago. But basically what amused me was what he was supposed to have said to the lady, because he invited her to his hotel in London. And when he was supposed to start whatever, he says, I want to show you a higher form of glory. And I'm like,
isn't that poetic?
Exactly. And I'm like, what is all this? But truthfully, let's look at this thing for what it is. Like he rightfully said, we have more of this kind of issues with this one pastor kind of churches that are not institutionalized, like the Anglican or this, who has set rules and regulations from over the years.
Caveat,
and all that.
even the Catholic Church with all its rules has serious issues
yes,
with sexual abuse.
Yes, that because you see they are doing something that is not even, that is inhuman, if you ask me, or what's the word I should use. That idea of celibacy, of not getting married, those are not practical. I think the Catholic Church should reform itself and look at that. But that's a different story. Let's focus on FATOYINBO. And like I said, in a country where rape is like a big stigma, people don't even like to talk about it. But from what we can see, it is because of the kind of horrendous hallucinations and whatever that this thing inflicts on the psyche of the troubled victims. That is why they come out. Even in America, we see people coming out 30, 40 years later. You saw what happened to the man that was supposed to be the role model for families, Bill Cosby, and then the Weinstein guy and all that. So I think that this is something, like you rightfully said, the law should prosecute to the highest level of, diligent prosecution.
Okay, let's take a short commercial break, and then when we return, you can conclude your thoughts on this issue of the Koza pastor and the allegations of rape. We'll take a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to ThisDayLive, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me in our Lagos studio, I have Professor Bola Akintenawa and Chike Ogia.
Yes.
Now, Chike, before we went on that commercial break,
Yes.
you were making a few comments about the issue of allegations of rape
Yes.
against the pastor of Koza.
Yes.
And we were wondering, what's the responsibility of the church?
Yes.
What should all the church organizations,
Yes.
what should they do? How do we get out of this mess?
Seriously.
Legally.
As with any facet of human life, there must be some regulation among this. That is why in aviation we have the NCAA, which is the regulatory body to make sure that safety is enhanced. Now we have a situation where we have different Christian sects or, bodies, but there is an umbrella body called CAN. And we expect that CAN must be up and going about its duties about things like this.
CAN is the Christian Association of Nigeria.
Yes, but
there's also the Pentecostal Federation
all of them,
Nigeria.
They should all come out. And we are not hearing from them. That is what I find troubling personally. They have not come out strongly to make statements to condemn this. Even if all they have to say is, yes, this is an allegation, this guy should down his tools and then let them go to court. But we have a situation where this guy goes away for a few days or a few weeks and he's back again in the pulpit. How many more people are still in danger of this kind of thing? You see, so these are the things I think that are very important that we are not looking into in Nigeria. Because if we don't sort this problem out and forcefully deal with it with the law, thank God for the law, you will have these kind of things occurring in different places. Because pastors are basically human beings. They are men like me and you. And they are still guided by the visuals that guide men.
Anyway, let's commend Adesuwa Yenekwe and Why Nigeria and Arise News for bringing the issue back to the front burner of public discourse. Because it will appear as if at some point, people were beginning to just forget about the issue.
And we should also commend those two pastors, Pastor Oset, that was his spiritual father, and the lady pastor,
Pastor Olotu.
Pastor Olotu, you can see the forthrightness in what they are saying. These are people that knew him, and they are talking, forcefully against this thing.
So those two spiritual mentors,
yes,
they are the people who actually should be called pastors.
Yes.
All others.
No, I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go that far. Prof, don't let us label everyone else because of the sin of one person. Allegedly.
A pastor, a messenger of God, who will not come into the open to condemn societal ills cannot answer that name.
Well, how many university professors are, raising their voices against infractions in the university system? Let's leave it that way. But let's go to the United States, where the embattled British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is now facing a potential probe into his alleged ties to a U.S. businesswoman. Authorities in London asked the country's police watchdog on Friday to decide whether there are grounds to investigate Johnson for misconduct in public office while he was London mayor. Johnson's supporters denounced the referral as a politically motivated attack launched just before his ruling Conservative Party's annual conference. Meanwhile, there could be a vote of no confidence in the UK government in order to remove Johnson as Prime Minister and secure a Brexit date extension. Following talks between opposition party leaders at Westminster, Stuart Hussey said the move appears to be the only way of ensuring Johnson did not push through a no-deal Brexit on October 31st. Hussey, a former Scottish National Party deputy leader, said the aim was to stop a no-deal Brexit and that all opposition leaders, opposition parties also, and Tory rebels needed to be united. The SNP MP urged the Liberal Democrat leader Joe Swinson to get behind the move, which could lead to Jeremy Corbyn being installed in number 10. Swinson has previously said she will not put Corbyn in Downing Street, even for a short period. Prof, the United Kingdom seems to be confused.
Brexit.
over Brexit,
The problem is Brexit.
over the ruling of the Supreme Court, and over what should be done to move forward. You know, the against no deal law, and you have, Boris Johnson and the Brexiteers insisting that with or without a deal, and in spite of the anti-no deal legislation, they would take the United Kingdom out of the EU on October 31st in deference to the decision of the people in the 2016 referendum. What do you think, Prof?
Johnson simply adopted the 1871 Bismarckian strategy, which is that knowing fully well that there may not be any way out in securing an entente, an understanding with the European Union, he adopted the strategy of proroguing the parliament, which the Supreme Court had now said, no, it is illegal.
That's right.
You can't do that one. His strategic calculation was that, look, if the parliament is shut, they are on holidays, there will be little time left before October 31. And in this case, he will have his Brexit become a fait accompli. Now, all these looking at his days when he was mayor, is also to foment trouble, create problems for him.
Of course.
In such a way that he will not be able to concentrate and prevent
the job at hand.
So this is just politics.
It's just politics. It's nothing more than that. And at the end of the day, you know, the problem is not that the British do not want Brexit. We need to be very clear on that.
Yeah, Parliament says there must be an extension till January 31st, 2020. And that Johnson must follow certain conditions outlined in the against no deal legislation.
This is subject to the whims and caprices of the European Union. The European Union members, especially the leading countries there,
Germany and
France, they made it clear that they are not ready for renegotiation. All right? You either want to be or you do not want to be.
That's right.
So now
and another issue, the Irish backstop.
Is there. So
I think that's the most topical.
So you can now look at it from the perspective that, look, the ordinary British people are saying Brexit without deal may create fundamental problems. It's just the fear. But
it's called Project Fear.
So Johnson and his school of thought are now saying, look, please, whatever fears you may want to nurse, there is the need to exit, go out of the European Union.
But Chike, just in 1 minute before we close this program,
yes.
What do you think?
What I think, basically, Prof has gone through is that the Brexit situation was not fully thought through by the British, and they have entered a catch-16 situation.
16 or 2-2?
Whatever it is. They don't know whether to go forward or to go backward. Now, if you look at part of the...
your view. I don't share
I know,
your view.
I know you don't, but I'm entitled to my opinion.
Yes.
But the truth is this. If you look at those charges that are even being brought against Boris for what he did, as one of them is that he gave some lady £10,000 for a deal.
But the lady is still doing business with the city.
And all that. But that just tells you, like I said, because that is to make sure that he's harassed enough and he will not be able to make progress on his no-deal Brexit. Now, where the situation gets even worse is that they cannot make the Labour leader the Prime Minister of Britain. Because if he goes to, even with what is happening to Boris, if he goes to election tomorrow, he can't win.
Who wants Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister?
Exactly. He cannot
anyway, on that note, we've got to close
the whole
this.
thing is
Nobody is going to vote for Jeremy Corbyn. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.